"You look tired. Let's get you inside," my husband cheerfully called out as we neared our home. Just as I was about to cross the threshold, my mother-in-law stepped in front, her posture rigid. "Andrea, could you do us a quick favor and run an errand? It's a short trip to the store. You're the daughter-in-law after all." With a quick nod, she handed me a shopping list and closed the door behind her. I'm Andrea, a 27-year-old housewife, and have been married to Albert for 3 years. Long before Albert, there was another significant relationship in my life. We started dating in middle school and continued through high school and into college, a relationship that lasted 4 solid years. I thought we were destined to marry once we had established our careers. However, during my second year in college, he disappeared mysteriously, leaving behind only a terse text. "I'm sorry, we need to break up." He was gone without any further explanation. Despite exhaustive searches and inquiries among mutual friends, his whereabouts and reasons remained elusive. It was a devastating blow. If you're going to end it, at least have the decency to tell me face to face, I found myself thinking, unable to grasp his sudden absence. As I struggled to accept what had happened, moving forward seemed like a Herculean task. Rather than dealing with my pain head-on, I found myself slowly unraveling. College became a blur of parties where I became known for giving out hugs liberally to anyone and everyone, yet I somehow never let things go further. Maybe it was his lingering presence in my mind that kept me from losing myself completely. My friends, seeing my decline, were pained and stepped in. They meant well and started introducing me to new people, hoping a fresh start in my love life would help stabilize me. Each new meeting brought calm, steady individuals into my life. Yet, despite my efforts to engage with others, I found myself recoiling, gripped by a deep-seated fear of abandonment. Even so, I pushed through to keep my promises to my friends. Amidst my whirl of doubt and apprehension, I met Albert. He was older, exuding a calm assurance and a clear sense of direction that struck a chord within me. "I'm focused on advancing my career and need a partner who supports me at home," he stated firmly, his certainty igniting a flicker of hope in me. His words echoed the dreams I once harbored with my previous partner, dreams of a shared future post-college. After graduation, I took a year to gain valuable work experience, a time that was both enriching and empowering. However, when the moment came to commit to Albert, I readily transitioned into the role of a homemaker, setting my professional ambitions aside to build our home life together. Life with Albert has unfolded smoothly. His consistent affection and thoughtfulness make daily life comfortable. Drawing on the independence I developed while single, I adapted well to managing our home. Whenever I fell ill or felt overwhelmed, Albert would seamlessly take over household responsibilities, his dedication unwavering. While Albert's career might lack public glamour, his steadfast commitment is something I deeply admire. Our life might not be lavish, but there's a profound joy in the simplicity of our connection. As our second Christmas together approached, a call from my mother-in-law sent a chill through me. "Come home for Christmas this year. We have relatives visiting," she commanded, her tone as stern as ever. In contrast to my easygoing mother, her assertive nature always put me on edge. "Of course, we'll be there," I replied, masking my nervousness. Last Christmas, we had opted for a trip, setting aside the usual family gathering since it was our first year as a married couple. I remembered how Albert had informed his parents of our plans. Yet now, facing another command from his mother, it seemed I was the one to manage her expectations. The thought of the upcoming holiday visit filled me with dread, despite my limited familiarity with the intricate dynamics of my husband's family. "It's just for 3 days," I reassured myself, trying to see it as a brief and manageable commitment. "Albert, your mom called. What's the plan?" I asked, a hint of anxiety in my voice. "She wants us to come home for Christmas. We've got relatives visiting too. Since we missed last year, I think it's only fair we go this time," he responded, his voice tinged with hesitation. With gifts packed and preparations made, we set out for his parents' home, an hour-and-a-half drive that felt longer due to my growing apprehension. It had been a while since our last visit, and the weight of expectation hung heavily in the air. The nerves were buzzing under my skin as we parked the car. "Just relax, it's Christmas," Albert said with a shrug, trying to ease the tension as we got out. His laid-back approach did little to soothe my jittery nerves. As we approached the house, a familiar voice rang out, and Albert was quick to respond, heading towards his cousin Karen. She greeted him with a playful hug, but he gently pushed her away, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Karen, a year Albert's senior, had always enjoyed teasing him, a dynamic rooted deep in their childhood. The first time I met her, her close and jovial manner with Albert threw me off, making me wonder if there might be more to their relationship, but it soon became clear that her ribbing was just part of a brother-sister-like bond they had cultivated over the years, though it visibly irked Albert at times. Despite his annoyance, Karen was nothing but warm and inviting towards me, quickly dispelling any fears I might have had about her intentions. "Andrea, it's been too long. Let's catch up with lots of drinks this Christmas. See you tomorrow. I've got some errands to run," Karen chirped before disappearing back into the house. "Great, just what we needed," Albert muttered under his breath, clearly irked by the encounter. As we lingered outside, he complained about our timing, with his parents' house sitting in the opposite direction of where we needed to go for the rest of his family's gathering. Resigned, he headed towards his parents' home, venting his frustration along the way. Yet, despite the slight detour, a part of me felt relieved. Karen's fleeting visit, though unexpected, was a timely distraction that helped ease my anxieties. With a renewed sense of purpose, I followed Albert, ready to dive into the holiday spirit. "We're back," Albert announced as he pushed open the front door. Almost immediately, my mother-in-law came bustling over. "Welcome home, you both must be tired. Come on in." She ushered us inside with her usual briskness. "Hello," I greeted her politely, attempting to follow my husband into the warm embrace of the house. But before I could step in, she blocked my path. "Andrea, could you run a quick errand for us? It's just a small shopping trip. Naturally, as the daughter-in-law, it falls to you," she declared, thrusting a list into my hands and swiftly closing the door behind her. As I glanced down at the lengthy list she handed me, I sighed, bracing myself for the task ahead. Feeling completely overwhelmed, I stared at the long list of items my mother-in-law had handed me. It ranged from simple, everyday essentials like olive oil and vinegar to more extravagant items such as baguettes, exotic fruits, and even luxury items and lobster. Clearly, this was not just a quick shopping run, it was an extensive endeavor. Having only visited my in-laws a few times, I was not familiar with the area at all. This list is massive. How am I supposed to manage all this alone? And who's covering the costs? I muttered to myself, feeling the weight of unreasonable expectations. My husband, who must have heard the exchange, remained notably absent, adding to my frustration. "Hey, Albert, aren't you going to help?" I called out, standing outside bewildered, waiting for any sign of support. But to my dismay, all I heard was laughter echoing from inside the house. "I see how it is," I grumbled under my breath, feeling sidelined and taken for granted. Frustrated by my mother-in-law's blatant demands and my husband's apparent indifference, I decided I had enough. In a surge of anger, I drove back home, determined to enjoy what was left of the holiday on my terms. I bought food and drinks for a quiet Christmas evening at home. As I settled in with a beer, a strange noise caught my attention. It was coming from my husband's belongings. I had driven home with his luggage in the car, and now his phone was ringing incessantly. My curiosity piqued. I had never felt the urge to snoop through his phone before, but now, under these circumstances, I couldn't hold back. I glanced at the caller ID. It was a woman's name. Frozen in place, I watched as the call ended and a text notification popped up. With a heavy heart, I read the messages that flashed on the screen. "Albert, when are you coming back from the in-laws?" I'm feeling jealous of being here without you. I've put off seeing you for Christmas, but make sure to come to me as soon as you return." My heart sank as the harsh reality hit me. My husband was having an affair. Every bit of affection I had for him turned cold in an instant. While I had previously dismissed my mother-in-law's harshness as a minor irritation due to our rare interactions, discovering Albert's betrayal was a complete game changer. I couldn't fathom continuing the sham of a marriage. Driven by a mix of betrayal and urgency, I tried to unlock his phone, and to my disbelief, the password was my birthday. The irony of using my birthday to secure a device that hid his infidelity was just another blow in this cascade of revelations. As I processed the undeniable evidence of his infidelity stored on his phone, text messages and photos that left little room for doubt, I grappled with the reality of my husband's betrayal. In a moment of boldness, I grabbed his phone and decided to set a trap. Posing as him, I sent a message to his mistress. "My wife has gone back to her parents' house after a disagreement, so we have the chance to spend Christmas together. Come over." Her eager response arrived promptly, and I gave her our address, telling her to come within the hour. True to her word, the doorbell rang just 20 minutes later. Expecting to confront the mistress, I opened the door with a mixture of dread and determination, only to find my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law standing there instead, their faces etched with gloom. "Oh, we're back," my mother-in-law said somberly, exchanging uneasy glances with my husband. "What happened to you two? Let us in for now," she continued, motioning for me to step aside. As I let them into the living room, another voice caught my attention. It wasn't my father-in-law. Turning toward the entrance, I was surprised to see Karen standing next to an even more unexpected figure, my grandmother-in-law, the matriarch of the family. "What brings you here?" I started to ask, but my grandmother-in-law cut me off, her tone softening as she ushered everyone inside. "Come on, Albert, and you too, Andrea," she said, her voice carrying an apologetic note. "I'm sorry for ignoring you earlier, Andrea. And Albert, I apologize for any oversight on my part." Observing my husband and mother-in-law, I noticed their visible discomfort in her presence. My grandmother-in-law's piercing gaze held them accountable, a clear sign of her intolerance for dishonesty and manipulation. Though she could be quite formidable in her direct approach, there was an undeniable warmth about her that had always made me respect her. It turned out that Karen had confronted my husband about our absence after noticing our car missing from the driveway. Caught off guard, he had tried to shift the blame onto my mother-in-law. Enraged by his lies, Karen pressed him for the truth, which eventually led to the whole shocking revelation coming to light. My grandmother-in-law, having been informed of the situation by Karen, wasted no time in reprimanding both my husband and mother-in-law. Even my father-in-law, who had been innocently cleaning up around the neighborhood, was shocked by the developments. Meanwhile, I had turned off my phone, making myself unreachable. Concerned about my whereabouts, they hurried back to find me. As we discussed the unfolding events, the doorbell rang again. This time, I was almost certain it was the mistress at the door. "Karen, could you please answer the door?" I called out. As she moved to open it, a sudden commotion ensued, followed by voices in dispute. Watching the scene unfold, I saw my husband's complexion turn pale, a clear sign of his guilt as the unexpected guest arrived. The tension in the room escalated rapidly, setting the stage for an unavoidable confrontation. As the surreal scene unfolded, I couldn't help but stifle a chuckle despite the gravity of the situation. The woman my husband had unwittingly invited over tried to make a swift exit, only to be stopped by Karen, who promptly escorted her into the living room. A collective gasp filled the room as everyone caught sight of her. The lady was dressed in an audacious headpiece and a fluttering skirt that mimicked a maid's uniform. The absurdity of her outfit only heightened the shock of her presence. Why is she dressed like that? I wondered aloud, my curiosity piqued about my husband's involvement with such a character. The woman, clearly under the impression she was meeting my husband privately, froze in shock as she surveyed the room full of stern faces. "Albert, what is going on here?" I demanded, my voice a mix of disbelief and irritation. Albert, caught off guard, stammered a response. "Well, you see, this girl is, your mistress, right? How did you find out?" the mistress blurted out, her face turning a deep shade of red as she looked around nervously. "Yes, I saw your phone. From photos to messages, I've seen it all," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. At this revelation, the mistress panicked, her eyes darting for an escape or an ally in Albert or my mother-in-law, her plea for help throwing me further into confusion. What followed was utter chaos. Karen and I pressed Albert for details about the affair, while my father-in-law and grandmother-in-law took my mother-in-law to task over her treatment of me. It was glaringly obvious to everyone that their behaviors were indefensible, with my mother-in-law receiving particular scorn for condoning the affair. The most bizarre twist was learning how my husband had become acquainted with the maid. Oddly enough, my mother-in-law had played a significant role. She had developed an interest in themed cafes, but felt uncomfortable going alone, so she roped in my husband as her companion. Their shared outings to these cafes, enjoying the unique atmosphere, had somehow spiraled into an affair. What baffled me even more was my mother-in-law's strange affinity for the mistress and her dismissive attitude towards the affair, seemingly blind to the pain it inflicted on me. As the holiday season approached, the weight of these revelations led to a drastic decision. Albert and I agreed to divorce before Christmas. This decision was echoed by my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who also chose to end their marriage amidst the unfolding drama. As the legal formalities proceeded, the mistress stood trembling, her demeanor a blend of fear and uncertainty under Karen's stern gaze. She seemed diminished, perhaps overwhelmed by the thought of how marriage, which she may have once viewed romantically, had become entangled in trauma. But that concern was no longer mine. After reaching a settlement with my husband, I watched as the mistress slowly faded from my life, a somber reminder of the tumultuous events that had reshaped our futures. After the upheaval of my divorce and severing ties with my mother-in-law, I found myself relishing a fresh start as a newly single woman. I landed a job and reveled in the independence it brought. Life was on an upward trajectory, and I was eager to steer it in new directions. Amidst these changes, something unexpected happened. Karen and I grew incredibly close. Our shared experiences had turned us into inseparable drinking buddies, and our plans often included bar-hopping escapades. One such evening, as I headed to our usual meeting spot, I noticed a figure standing next to Karen. As I drew closer, my curiosity turned to shock. It was my ex-boyfriend, the very one who had disappeared without a trace years ago. His presence caught me completely off guard. "Karen, I'm sorry, but I have to go," I stammered, overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions. "What? Andrea, why?" Karen protested, her confusion clear as she saw me turning to leave. I couldn't stay, not with the past suddenly staring me in the face. I started running, hearing my ex shout after me, "Andrea, wait, let's talk!" But I couldn't confront him, not yet. The flood of old feelings pushed me forward, away from the ghost of what once was. Eventually, I learned the truth about his sudden disappearance. My ex-boyfriend's family had faced a series of dire challenges. His grandmother had battled dementia, his father's business had failed, and his mother was overwhelmed by caregiving duties. They had moved to the countryside to find some peace with relatives. His grandmother had since passed away, and their lives had stabilized somewhat. He confessed that he regretted not having the courage to share these struggles with me at the time. "I understand now, but you should have told me," I responded, acknowledging the weight of what he had carried alone, though a part of me still felt the sting of abandonment. Understanding his reasons brought me some closure and a degree of sympathy for the hardships he had endured, but the surprises weren't over yet. by an incredible twist of fate, it turned out that my ex now worked at the same company as Karen, and they even shared the same shifts. This revelation added another layer of complexity to our newfound reconnection, embedding my past and present in an intricate weave I was just beginning to unravel.